First, we suited up. We tried to understand where we are, who we are, and what's our current situation. Number two, we scanned the environment. We looked at what's going on around us and the immediate future. But okay, we have a location now and we have a direction, but we're not out of the woods yet. So now we go to the third step. And here, I want to talk to you about the concept of survival. And here, my metaphor is Captain America. Okay? What is a survivor? Someone who had faced great odds, sometimes life or death situations, taken to the edge of existence, and just clawed back with bare hands, and nothing else but an inner voice that kept saying, "Don't give up." Think Captain America, on the ground in Manhattan, if you remember that scene, fighting with bare hands and a shield against unending waves of alien enemy that just kept coming at him. His focus at that moment was not on winning the war, but only on defeating the enemy that is in front of him. The German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "That which does not kill us will make us stronger." And I believe that this is not just a time for survival, but also for resilience. For the battle we face might be one for the long haul. In fact, it's already looking like a long haul because it already has been 3 months since we started this, and still our cases are increasing. So you can expect that the battle will not be resolved immediately. For those of you whose business models are shaken to the core, your primary objective is to stabilize the business. For this, there are 3 major actions that you need to take. Number 1, put out your fires. If you are bleeding red ink, that must be stopped first. Find a way to cut your expenses like rent or non-performing assets. Conserve your cash. Try to build liquidity by collecting receivables if possible, or delaying or restructuring your payables if also possible. Next, maintain your operating footprint to just the essentials. Boil down to your basic operating model. Cut down on expensive habits and practices. If you travel to meet clients, then use Zoom instead. If you like, expensive, dining in expensive restaurants, then try cooking at home instead. Cut down your costs. Finally, rebalance your organizational structure to keep efficiency at minimal overhead. Go back to your strategy square and identify the cause of the imbalance. Then find ways to re-stabilize by adjusting your product offering or your delivery mechanism. In that checklist are 3 broad, areas that you need to address. If you haven't started addressing it yet, or if you did, if you have, that can help you review what else you need to do. I'll just take a few points from that checklist for our discussion today. Number 1, we need to protect our employees. Obviously, this involves putting in protocols for social or physical distancing, generous or more understanding allowances in terms of absences and leaves, and obviously we can't rely on just the government for testing in terms of people who are infected. We may have to do that also for our organizations, among others. Then you need to protect your current business. You need to have an emergency communications plan. This includes key contacts, a chain of business networks and processes for tracking and conveying businesses and employee status. You need to have a pandemic coordinator. If you haven't had one yet, you need to assign someone whose job is just to make sure that everything related to this pandemic is coordinated and disseminated properly, particularly if you have a very large organization. Of course, your travel policies will be affected because there are some restrictions these days, although we have started to see some easing of the restrictions on these policies happening. Next, initiating important policies regarding the pandemic. And, this is where you want to develop your response plan. I mean, right now we some businesses have started to operate, but what happens if there would be an outbreak in the workplace? What is your response plan? What will you do? What's your SOP if the virus, someone is infected, comes to work? What happens next? How do you now contain that? How do you now do testing, etc.? And what do you do with the infected staff at work? So these are the things we need to think about. Then we look at communications and education. Obviously, people are confused, concerned, right? They're also worried. So we need to have a way to communicate and educate them about how to deal with this. We need to have a platform for that, including information about related to the pandemic, health resources, as well as the company's plan of action. And we need to disseminate this information to our staff so that everyone is clear about what's going on. Then you'd like to look at, particularly those of you who say that you already have things under control in your organizations, then maybe this is the time for you to look at how can you help the community, particularly other businesses in your industry or other suppliers and vendors or distributors working with you to make sure that the ecosystem of companies using best practices increase. Also assisting public health agencies, coordinating with health insurance, and granting access to your assets, your resources, so that things like if you have a spare warehouse, for example, you can use as a storage for PPE equipment, or maybe as a field hospital for public health in case there will be an outbreak. To have a plan for securing the future of your business. This is where you need to start not just staying where you are, but then looking at how to move forward into the future. It's like if you were in a sinking boat, after you secure everyone on life rafts, the next task you have is to make sure that you move to the shore, because until you get there, you're not out of trouble yet. So this is where you need to do your plans. Other tools you can use, also competitive intelligence. What are other players in my industry doing? How do I benchmark on that? Best practices so I can also survive. And then even war games, but this one is more advanced, simulations, and see what's going to happen in the new future. So we've already talked about suiting up and scanning, and these are your basic building blocks. Okay, know yourself, know your surroundings. Sounds familiar? Sounds like Sun Tzu, right? Then you're ready for battle. Now, surviving is not yet the battle. Surviving is just a natural instinct for self-preservation. For some of us, maybe we don't have enough resources. What we need to do is just to survive. We can't fight any battles yet. We just need to survive. We'll fight our battles some other day. That's okay.